This topic will be fermentation, and this will happen when there's no oxygen available. So there's nothing to, or oxygen or anything to accept the electron in the ETC, electron transport chain. We have two types. We got alcohol fermentation or lactic acid fermentation. In animals, we're gonna have lactic acid fermentation, which is on the right. And in bacteria and yeast, they're gonna have alcohol fermentation. So let's talk about alcohol fermentation first. So let me get rid of that. Remember, we at the end of glycolysis, we got two pyruvates, and where there's no oxygen available, when there is no oxygen, then mitochondria cellular respiration will shut down. So pyruvate cannot go in there anymore. Okay, because all the electrons are backed up. There's no way for NADH to drop their electron or F8H2. So cells have evolved another way to break down this pyruvate. Okay, this happens. So fermentation happens in cytosol because they couldn't get into the mitochondria here. What happens in alcohol fermentation is that you're gonna lose carbon dioxide. Okay, so remember pyruvate was 3-carbon molecule. Now they lost 1 carbon molecule. Don't worry about this 2 because at the end of glycolysis you make 2 pyruvate. Let's just focus on 1. Okay, so it's gonna lose 1 carbon dioxide. It becomes acetaldehyde. Don't worry about that 2 right there. Okay, and then acetaldehyde will turn into ethanol. Okay? That's what makes the bread rise. When you cut a slice of bread, you got like little holes there. It's because of the carbon dioxide here. Okay, form gas. This gets released, and this is how you make beer and wine and everything else. Okay, the whole point of having alcohol fermentation or any kind of fermentation is not to make ATP. Gotta remember that. Okay, the point is to make NAD plus. Okay, why? NAD plus is needed. It's required. It's one of the reactants for glycolysis. Okay, so without NAD plus, there's no way to make more ATP. So making 2 ATP is better than nothing, right? So that's why they go through this alcohol fermentation. Okay, now let's talk about. Let's get rid of this now. Let's talk about what happens in animals here. Lactic acid fermentation. It's pretty much the same thing. We got 2 pyruvates here. Now that's gonna turn into pretty much the same thing in terms of making NADP and what is it, NAD plus again. It's gonna turn into lactic acid, lactate. Okay? Again, whole point is not to make ATP, but to regenerate NAD plus so that glycolysis can go again. Okay, to make some ATP. Now here's the interesting part. Now all of a sudden, when oxygen is plenty again, when oxygen is available, it's way more efficient to break down pyruvate than go through this lactic acid fermentation. So all the lactate or lactic acid that was gathered will go back and make pyruvate again, and then it's gonna go into the mitochondria when oxygen is available. Okay, so but then the alcohol fermentation, since we lost carbon dioxide right there, even though oxygen is available, this is one way, dead end. The ethanol cannot go back into and grab carbon dioxide. It's not photosynthesis, right? You cannot reform pyruvate again. Okay, so that's the difference between alcohol fermentation and lactic acid fermentation.